Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Arden, and today we are going to review a whole bunch of death metal comics that I have from the last few weeks. We'll be starting things off with a look at Multiverse's End, followed by the latest two issues of Justice League, 54 and 55, Speed Metal number 1, followed by Death Metal number 4, and then finally we're going to talk about Robin King number 1. So yeah, I think I have all of them that have come out since the last little bit, and they're all pretty useful in kind of setting things up for Death Metal number 4. So I do recommend, especially Multiverse's End and Speed Metal do a lot to kind of bring us into what we need to know for Death Metal. When it comes to the overall quality of these books, we have a range of different talent. I really enjoyed Multiverse's End. If you read Multiversity or even saw our video on it, it pays off pretty nicely and has a lot of features from that story and the DC universe in general. Justice League I'm a lot softer on, and I think I'm going to stop picking up books from here on out from that series. Hey Karsten Logan, thanks for joining us along with other people who are coming into the stream. Speed Metal was quite a bit of fun. Interestingly, that and Justice League all have the same writers, but it does really have like a bit of a hokey ending and stuff. But it's very like Flash celebratory in ways that I guess long-term fans would quite enjoy. Death Metal number 4 was pretty exciting, but we're kind of getting into the final end game of things, and I'm starting to feel a little ready to wind down. All these books, like at a certain point, I'm glad that they did expand Death Metal, because earlier on in this storyline I was complaining, or well, I was concerned, we'll say, that it seemed like a really cool idea and premise and a little world they created in the Metalverse, but it didn't seem like we were going to get a full exploration of it. I'm now quite content with the exploration we've gotten out of all these tie-ins and stuff that have since kind of been added to DC's roster, and feel pretty happy with what I got out of this event, assuming that the ending is at least halfway decent. But we're starting to get a picture of what that's going to maybe look like, and I'll talk a bit about that more as we go along. Finally, there is the Robin King book. I didn't really expect too much out of it, but on the whole, it was pretty fun. I don't have a lot of objections there. Carson says, would you prefer Batman to be a Green Lantern or a Yellow Lantern? You know, the thing about that, he really could be either, because Batman has a lot of willpower and the ability to cause great fear in others. I feel like those two domains of the Lantern Corps are kind of opposite ends of the same coin, and much like how Hal Jordan and other Green Lanterns, like Sinestro, can very easily be a Yellow Lantern, Batman can kind of easily be both, but personally I do like the idea of a Yellow Lantern. We see a lot of different Lantern Batmans in this book. Even a Red Lantern Batman's a pretty fun idea, as has been he's shown up in a few of these Death Metal books as we've gone along. So, with all that in mind, I think I would definitely recommend Death Metal, its core series still, Speed Metal, and Multiverse's End. If you found Robin character as a character interesting, it's worth your time. Karsten asked if it's snowing. No, it actually was unseasonably warm today, which was kind of nice. I had the heat off and my air conditioner running in fan mode earlier, so yeah, it wasn't too bad. Not sure why you're asking about weather. I'm not sure if it's snowing elsewhere, but maybe that's just a because we live in Canada question. Anyhow, or I don't know if it's just because of the lighting I have set up right now that it looks that way. It is kind of cloudy outside, but also that green screen blocks a lot of the natural light now, which is actually probably for the best. It used to really drown out things. It still does. Like, if you look back on those, from my perspective, those posters aren't terribly lit right now, but the way the light hits them off the camera, it does, like, you can't make them out too good. But, Kirsten says it is snowing at his place. Well, that sucks. It's October. I'm not a big fan of cold or snow, even though I live in Canada. But, yeah, interesting. Thanks for joining us, Mr. DC Comics. It's certainly the right stream to join us, because this is all about DC Comics. So anyways, let's talk a little bit about Multiverse's End to start off with. We got Tinian the Fourth writing this book. Um, Juan Gedeon doing the artwork. Mike Spicer doing coloring. Russ Wooten doing lettering. One thing I was thinking just now was it's kind of interesting these death metal tie-ins have allowed different artists, less common writers to take the fold. But unfortunately, this batch of books is kind of on DC's habit of relying on the same old talents, it kind of feels like. Though this book was fun on the whole, in spite of what I just said. We open on Earth 3, which is always fun, and Owlman has John Stewart captive. John is kind of explaining what's going on in the larger death metal universe at the moment and what the Justice League is trying to do. They are currently attempting to destroy the tuning forks across the multiverse so that Perpetua won't gobble up the remaining worlds that live. And we kind of cut across different worlds doing that. We go to Earth X from the multiverse, which, for those that don't remember, is the Nazi world where, like, Superman rules the world with, I believe, the Fourth Reich, and Guy Gardner and Captain Carrot are battling his forces. It's awesome. Gardner's like bonding with Captain Carrot. And again, like if you've read Multiversity, it's pretty awesome seeing some of these characters come back in a pretty fun way, because we have like basically the Justice League incarnate across the multiverse, facing evil versions of Superman and other forces to try and destroy these towers that have been erected and Perpetua is using to absorb power. And we get a retelling of a lot of the stuff that's happened across the Justice League history, and Crisis history, retold in a very cartoony kind of art by Gedeon. And I really like it. It's kind of fun. It goes with stuff like Captain Carrot very well. And Carrot talks about how like he's lost everything on his world. It's dark for a cartoony character that relies on those type of physics. And Gardner bonds with him because his world's kind of gone through the same thing. It's good stuff. But then, and this is kind of appropriate for Carson's question, because I forgot about this part. Perpetua is not exactly taking the Justice League's actions lying down, and she summons the Rainbow Batman from the entire core of different lantern rings. And so yeah, we see a yellow, red, blue Batman, like all those powered rings and stuff, facing off against these various heroes, including like a version of Wonder Woman and stuff on the side of the heroes. It's fun stuff. And again, we kind of go through more DC history while this is happening. And the Green Lanterns and the other heroes are struggling against these Batman lanterns. But John says, I have like proof of this and you can learn more. He has a copy of the Harbinger computer from the center of the multiverse, which I guess is gone now. Like Perpetua destroyed it, but she's a copy of this and she knows everything, even beyond like the iterations of what happens before Crises. She's one of the few beings aware of that change in reality and what happened across those timelines. And she explains that Owlman dies over and over again. And we get this great flash where like the original Owlman died during the Anti-Monitor's Crisis event, way back in the first Crisis of Infinite Earths. He was reformed and then died and was recreated as part of the New 52, only for him to die again at the hands of Dr. Manhattan, which, you know, we know is true now. But that, like this book is a little treatise on all of DC history. It's very cool. And, like, even Owlman's character, it's fun to get a little exploration of that. And he learns this and starts to laugh. And Jon Stewart's like, what are you laughing about? He's like, I just understood. Like, I exist in every iteration of the multiverse. And it means that I'm going to survive whatever happens next, so long as some form of reality survives. And he agrees to, like, change sides with against the like Ultraman and stuff and work against Perpetua, because they had all kind of made a deal. And he's like, bats aren't welcome on Earth 3, and he starts to destroy the Rainbow Batman and blows up all the towers. across the surviving multiverse in a fun little moment where it's like, oh, it's Owlman. Can't futz with Owlman. He knew about these towers and was defending them before, so he was able to plant all these bombs. Everything goes up in ruins, and Perpetua screams out in frustration as Earth 3 goes up in flames. And the heroes manage to regroup on a little carrier ship and prepare for like the next iteration of the battle. I assume in Death Metal, the core series. I don't think they show up in Death Metal number 4, but I don't even remember. And we'll get to it soon enough. It's just because there's so many books that I'm getting it all mixed up now. But there was more tie-in stuff, I guess. They teased this Rise of the New God number 1 that I assume will be part of this or something. But still, it's all a lot. But I really liked Multiverse's End, and it might be the strongest book out of all of this that we're talking about. Karsten, I'm not sure what you're referring to. He was saying the name Captain Carrot is pretty funny. He's a funny character. I like him as part of the whole Multiverse's End thing because as a collection of different multiverse characters, he represents like the peak cartoony aspect of it and works well in the context of like the Looney Tunes crossover DC did a while back that like won awards. So I'm all for that. And you're saying you're sorry about your comment, and you had a theory about live on Earth 17, but I don't really understand what you're saying there, so no need to apologize. I'm not really sure what you mean there. DC Comics, though, was saying, I'm just glad to see Cyborg back with Nightwing and Starfire. Yeah, speaking of which, we were just about to talk about Justice League number 54 and 55. It's a fun story, because it's all about, like, those guys reuniting after Odyssey and all this stuff on the world of death metal. They're all creatively shown in different ways, which is something that I also criticized death metal about earlier, where we weren't seeing death metal versions of the superheroes. They were all just their normal selves. But that, as the event goes on, is clearly not the case. So we kind of open where we left off before, where like Lex Luthor is now kind of guiding these heroes to find Perpetua's throne. And Martian Manhunter is like pinned down by the Mind Hunter, an evil version of Batman that used like the Martian's DNA to become a version of Batman, and they engage in like a telepathic battle, but he's not like, he's got those telepathic powers too, so he's able to fight back. And meanwhile, the Justice League gang comes across the Valley of Staros, something that we had learned about in the guidebook, which had a map, and I was saying, oh, it's cool, like there's all these locations, we're not going to see all of them, and I don't think we still are, but because they're doing a lot of different times and stuff, we are seeing a good number of these locations, including this awesome spread page of this Valley of Staros. It's so literal, but it looks so cool. I forgot to mention, because we kind of just jumped into this book, Zermanico does the artwork, Romulo Ferrario Jr. does the coloring, and Tom Napolitano does the lettering. Their artwork is really cool in this book. And the Justice League kind of makes their way through, although Luthor's like, don't do it, it's a bad idea. Nightwing doesn't want to listen to him. And pretty soon they all start hallucinating the various fantasies as the Staros, which are just kind of lying there in the valley, are not so dormant. And Luthor manages to just barely save Nightwing from being devoured. And he's like, oh, you're right, the rest of your friends are screwed. We gotta, like, we're all screwed, like, being in this valley. We should have gone around, because now your team is under their control and they're going to kill us. And that leads right into the next book, which is already out, so we're just going to jump into it. And it has a different art crew, which is interesting. Robson Rocha does the penciling, Daniel Enriquez does the inks, Romulo Ferrario does the coloring, but Joshua Williamson writes both books. And we open with exactly where we left off, with the Justice League largely hallucinating and thinking they're fighting various threats, like Starfire's battling Blackfire, Detective Chimp's hallucinating his old friend, all this stuff. And Luthor is like, they're able to deduce that, like him and Nightwing, that the Justice League is being controlled by spores, and Nightwing and Luthor, because of their unique recent history, are both kind of immune to this sort of stuff. They're able to disable the spores, but the entire valley is actually a giant starro, and it starts to try and envelop them, and they just barely escape, like dragging Chimp out because he's still under its sway, and he gets all mad at them because he was happy in the hallucination, and I feel bad about Detective Chimp. I don't know if that's what you're referring to, Karsten, but I feel bad for him too. Luthor leads them to a boat forged out of the dead metal men. It took me a while to get that that's what they were, but if you look closely, it's a well-drawn image of them. And this book's got some good art, too. And they make their way off to the throne with Luthor, talking about how, it's not going to be easy, but we're going to get there and I will kill Perpetua. And they arrive at the tower, but the second they show up, they find Martian Manhunter and the Omega Titan basically waiting for them, because the Mindhunter actually used Hawkgirl to kind of lure her right to the Martian Manhunter, who he disguised himself as, and the entire Omega Titan blasts them with the final page just showing them being enveloped by his beams as the Justice League is apparently destroyed. And that ends his book. So I have to say, these Justice League books are well drawn and they were entertaining enough. But as I kind of said earlier, I kind of feel like I'm getting my fill of death metal at this point. And I am pretty much just done with Justice League for now. We've reviewed a lot of Justice League books, almost hitting 10 in a row now. And I'd rather focus my energy somewhere else at this point, as I've kind of put in my orders for the next couple of months. I think that's it for the series at the moment, because there's just more interesting things to talk about. And we've talked so much about death metal, and I'm kind of grouping these reviews together for that reason. And it is going to be an extra long review, because that's 3 books. We got 3 more to talk about. But next up is a pretty interesting one. And it's by the same writer, which is kind of interesting. We're talking about Joshua Williamson more than Scott Snyder in this series of reviews here. And I've always been pretty neutral about Joshua Williamson. I read some books that I like by him. I read others that are pretty middle of the road. These ones are okay. They have some fun parts and some interesting ideas. The Justice League books are okay, but they're really just the standoff adventure. And people were talking about filler with some of the earlier Justice League books. These are filler. These are just kind of companion pieces. But it is cool for them to focus on characters like Nightwing and Starfire and Cyborg, who really haven't been a part of the core death metal story whatsoever. So mixed feelings on those. I enjoyed them well enough, but I don't know if I'd go so far as to recommend them, and I'm kind of done, because there are more death metal tie-ins for Justice League out there, but I'm not that interested at this point. But as for speed metal, we pick up right where we last sort of left off the speedsters in death metal, is what I was trying to say there. And they kind of explain what's going on over the course of a few pages, but for those of you caught up, you should know we have Barry Allen, Wally West, empowered with Dr. Manhattan energy, and Jay Garrick, all running from, also empowered by Dr. Manhattan energy, Batman Who Laughs, who's chasing after them. And they're basically just burning up what's left of the Speed Force, just running and running and running from this cosmically empowered evil Batman who can just catch them at a moment's notice the second they stop. And they have no plan, which I kind of like. I like that idea of just they're going, and in a very Flash fashion, they really just don't have any idea beyond just running as fast as they can for as long as they can. This is then preceded by the Darkest Night unleashing a wave of dark flashes. And if you look pretty closely at a pretty cool page... Oh, let's talk for a minute about these artists before I get too far into the story. Where is this credit page? It always helps me a bit. No? Nowhere? Okay. Well, Barrows, Ferreira, and Lucas is what it says on the cover. I'm sure it's somewhere in here, but... Oh, here we are. Eddie Barrows does the penciling, Eber Ferreira does inks, and Adriano Lucas does coloring with Steve Wan's lettering. They all do a pretty great job, and yeah, like I say, if you look at this, there's an evil version of a Batman Flash, a Joker Flash, regular Flashes that are either like undead or all messed up looking, that are all evil, and a gorilla, all chasing after the various Flashes. Mr. DC Comics says Joshua Williamson was really good on the Flash. That's definitely where his strength lies, and it kind of shows in this book. I shouldn't downplay it too much. Oh, and the other version of Wally West is there too, running with the other speedsters. So they eventually realize that this isn't going to work. Jay Garrick, kind of always consistently being the slowest among these four, starts to slow down a bit. One of the Flashes touches him, and their touch like burns to the Flashes and drains the speed force out of them. And he's like, "You're gonna have to leave me behind. Like, this is my stop." But non-New 52 Wally West mutters out this equation and basically is able to use the Speed Force formula developed by Johnny Quick to tap into the Speed Force in a different way and use it to stop time, which I guess he's done once before or something. I assume from Williamson's run at some point or another. But who knows? Maybe it's from like some other buried part of Flash history that I don't know about. Either way, it gives them a little bit of time, but it's burning through the Speed Force faster than ever, so they need to think of something to do. And they're kind of, by chance, stopped in front of the Flash Museum, and they think about looking through it for stuff, but Barry Allen, who's been running around the world all this time throughout Death Metal before they got him to stop and help out when there was a plan, he says he was already here and it's already been like picked clean and there's nothing left. But Wally insists on checking anyways and trying to do something different, and it leads to this whole debate. But meanwhile, like, the Darkest Night is still like creeping in on their little stopped time bubble, and the other Flashes, except for Wally, all transform into a more death metal form, which gets into what I was saying. Like, yeah, we're getting to see the heroes more and more death metal-y as this reality kind of creeps in on them. Some of them, like, were affected by the change and look like this because they were here all this time. Others were in stasis but are gradually becoming more death metal-y through events like this. And eventually Wally, after arguing with Barry, who wants to keep running, Wally's like, no, we have to go backwards and charge towards the Metron throne. It's our only hope, and we have to run straight through the Horde, basically. And he convinces them to do it, and they all eventually get on board. And Barry puts his faith in Wally. It's like a whole character piece across this book, and it's well executed. I'm kind of glossing it over it here, but it's well explored, like in this issue. And they run through the Horde, and the Darkest Night instantly kind of clues into what he's doing, which I like, because, you know, he's still Batman, and he's got all this power now, but he's still able to deduce things like that. They start fighting through the Flashes, but New 52 Wally West and Jay Garrick kind of have to stay behind to fight the Horde. They just can't keep up, and eventually even Barry has to give Wally his powers and share his energy. And Wally, in a cool moment, gets his red suit back and makes it to the Metron chair. Flips a weird little, like this gesture to the Darkest Night, says too slow, and vanishes while the Darkest Night laughs. And the whole chair kind of explodes in energy, and Wally falls into the Speed Force, just like surrounded by lightning and stuff like that, until he enters into a white void with the Metron chair, and everyone's there waiting for him. And by everyone, I mean like Wally's family, the kids, what's her face? I forget her name, but his wife, and like Bart's there. It's a fun little moment. New 52, Wally West, Barry Allen, Jay Garrick are there, and they're all like, oh, like, we all got absorbed. You pulled us out of danger into this realm through the Speed Force or something. Bucket Think Tank says, high stakes musical chairs. Exactly. And they all talk about how like they're safe here and he saved everyone, but Wally says, oh, well, we gotta go back. Wonder Woman needs the chair and my powers, and he gets his blue abilities back. Barry and Jay join him, and they go racing off pretty much straight into Death Metal 4. So it's, like I said, it's a little hokey how, like, oh, his family is back and stuff, but it is kind of nice. And I was thinking, like, oh, I don't know, like, when the last time all those characters showed up, and, like, Johnny Quick and all these random speedsters from the past and stuff. And that was cool to see. But it did kind of make me laugh a little bit, where it's like, oh, Wally West just, like, no one dies, no danger happens, everything kind of just works out, at least for now. But whatever, it's fine. It is what it is. And that leads to Death Metal number 4, with another excellent looking holographic cover. It's kind of cool. They even always show up on camera really well, where you guys can easily make it out from what I'm just showing on the print version. Because obviously they don't show a shiny version on the digital versions that are flipping by, like that one right now by Happy Circumstance. The Bat says, I'm so happy about what they did with Superboy Prime. They made him a more serious character and not just a comic relief. I feel like I hadn't seen this since Superboy Prime since this semester. He says, I feel like I haven't seen this Superboy Prime since Sinestro Corps of War. Well, that leads nicely into this book, but a lot of that was brought up in the Trinity Crisis number 1 book, which was excellent and really important kind of for understanding what's happening in Death Metal number 4, which kind of picks up hot off the heels of that. And I have to say, given that there was a pandemic and DC made major moves in how they were shipping and producing these books, they didn't release any of this stuff out of order. And it's very easy to follow along and stuff, at least I find, without really, like, I've read all the tie-ins, but still, like, if you engage in them, it's been pretty straightforward, I dare say, given all the craziness that's been going on. But yeah, we pick up right where that stuff goes. There is the usual framing device of Sergeant Rock doing some narration, but now we see he's just like a head around like a crazy battle going on with like Blue, I think that's Ted Kord Blue Beetle, and like Kyle Rayner going up against evil Batman and stuff. Talks about how the Ring, like the Green Lanterns and other heroes, were able to save what they could of the multiverse. The Flashes are they're still racing against the Darkest Night as of the end of Speed Metal, and the Trinity is off in the deepest, darkest depths of the dark multiverse, on worlds where the crises that have happened across DC history have all happened. And it's pretty cool stuff. A lot of it is what we kind of saw at the end of Trinity War number 1, but you get a better sense of it. So, like, on the Crisis of Infinite Earths, Batman just starts dissolving into nothing, because that's what the Anti-Monitor has done with everything. That was his goal. And he's regressed to a childlike state because he is devolving into nothing, and it's just going to be entropy. Meanwhile, in the final Crisis world, there's just like a massive empowered version of Darkseid that has like a Green Lantern kneeling before him, and cuffed versions of I guess like Supergirl and Batgirl, and he just says like, I have absolute victory here, Kryptonian, and this ends with you being submerged into the fire pit as part of this deal he has with what was the Batman Who Laughs. And then finally, in the Infinite Crisis, Superboy Prime, Wonder Woman wakes up next to the corpse of Alexander Luthor, which I just love. Well, Alexander Luthor Jr., I should say. And she's attached to the big crazy antenna thing from Final Crisis. But there ain't any other bodies attached to it other than her and Alexander Luthor. But it's a wonderful nod to Infinite Crisis and Superboy Prime, who they actually talk a little bit. And Superboy Prime says, I have a perfect world. And he isn't exactly lying. He's got a world where everyone's happy and they've been raised on stories of the superheroes as they once were. And it's all about that, like, recurring motif in Infinite Crisis, where like he keeps complaining about the superheroes not being clear-cut and simple like they once were. And he says, like, that's who they are, and I'll have my own little bubble of the world as it should be as part of my deal with Batman Who Laughs. And I don't care about anything else. It's very Superboy Prime, but it's not unreasonable, like the Bat was saying in live chat there. I think it's a very real kind of character dynamic going on there. And she starts convincing him that, like, okay, we'll get to that because she hasn't talked about that part yet. And then we have a page where it just says, begin the countdown. And again, we're evoking like crisis era language and stuff, and it really feels like things are coming to a head. Um, the Robin King has Swamp Thing, Harley Quinn, and Jarro all kind of pinned down, and he's carrying Jonah Hex's head. Robin King stabs it with a special knife that just takes his soul directly to like the deepest pit of hell. Because Robin King's messed up, and we'll learn a little bit more about him soon. But we already kind of knew a little bit about him from one of the earlier tie-ins where they went into his origins as a version of Bruce Wayne that just killed his parents and became a version of Robin that just likes to slaughter people. But Robin King has some interesting ideas about the character that I didn't know about. So Wonder Woman eventually starts talking to meanwhile Batman and the Anti-Monitor are just like having a much less successful conversation where Batman just is not like gets dissolved into nothing, and Darkseid just throws Superman into like an apocalypse pit, and he begins to like burn, and they both destroy the little cubes that they brought and were supposed to empower with anti-crisis energy. But Wonder Woman kind of talks to Superboy Prime, and she talks about her vision for what's going to happen if she succeeds after Death Metal, which I think is becoming increasingly clear. Like, that is the direction we're going with for these things. And she says, like, imagine a world where things as they were before the original crisis of the infinite Earths, where there are infinite worlds, and each Earth is unique and connected, and you can have a world like Superboy Prime's world in a concert of infinite variations of that world, along with infinite variations of other worlds. And that's the whole idea of an infinity. And that's actually the idea of the original multiverse infinity theory of physics and stuff. And like, I feel like DC has always kind of been steered wrong from that. And that's kind of why I've always been pretty supportive of Death Metal, or at least the sense of direction I get from them that Scott Snyder has planned for the multiverse is this. And she manages to break free, and the Anti-Monitor and like Darkseid kind of channel their energy into Superboy's tower. And the idea is it's all supposed to kind of go to the Batman Who Laughs, who can use it to wage war against Perpetua. It's his final little piece of the puzzle, along with like Wally West energy, I guess. And he is like fighting with Wonder Woman, but in the end he decides, all right, like, we're gonna do this. And they put the energy into a little box, like one of the little Alfred cubes. That's what they're called. Sorry, Alfred boxes, variation of Mother Box. And he manages to pull free Batman and Superman, and together they all like kind of escape the dark multiverse with Superboy Prime. Like, they had to leave like Darkseid and the Anti-Monitor behind because they were not interested in helping out. But together with that, they arrive back in the Metalverse and find the Flashes with Wally West on the chair, which we know from the end of Speed Metal, and then Harley Quinn, Swamp Thing, and Jarro all waiting for them. And they throw the power into the Mobius chair, but Wally West is not empowered by the Dr. Manhattan. Dex Baker's saying he's got to go. He'll catch the rest on replay. Yeah, this is going to be a longer stream, but thanks for joining us. Mr. DC Comics says, I kind of agree with Superboy Prime. Superheroes of today are way too edgy. It's as if they're ashamed to be a good guy anymore. I would say that increasingly Marvel and DC are finding a better balance from that, but certainly it was a trend, especially around the height of the Infinite Crisis. But the problem is that they didn't like step away from that much. Oh, hey, Dex Baker, thanks for donating or super chatting $2, just because, as he says, with the crying emoji. Always appreciate that, guys. It makes it that much more worth doing these things, you know. But anyways, where were we? So yeah, Wally West seems to have lost his Manhattan powers, and he's like, I don't think it worked. And Wonder Woman's like, no, it didn't. And like we saw at the end of Speed Metal, like Batman Who Laughs was laughing when Wally West managed to reach the Mobius chair, and he says it's because he rigged the Mobius chair to redirect all the power to him, and it gave him everything he needed: Wally West's abilities and the anti-crisis energy, or no, sorry, the regular crisis energy that he needs to finally remake the universe in his image against Perpetua's desires even. And he says, like, so let me be the first to welcome you to the last 52. And that's how this book ends. Woof McGuff. Like, so Death Metal #4 itself is quite strong. And like I said, I'm kind of done with the Justice League tie-ins, but I ain't done with Death Metal. I don't even remember how many issues total it's going to be. It's either 6 or 7, but I am very curious where things are going, because it does feel like we're getting to the final phase. Oh, it doesn't say the total, but we are on part 4. Whatever the case is, I know it's going for a bit longer still. And I know the tie-ins are kind of winding down a little bit. Bucket Think Tank says, man just rigged musical chairs. Yeah, he done cheated. So our final book is a bit of a standalone thing and kind of a side thing. It's kind of the most side thing, but I definitely, like I said earlier, it has some interesting ideas going on, and I really do like the artists involved here. Always been a fan of them. So where are they? Let's get into that first. All right, so Peter J. Tomasi does the story and words, which is just a fun way of crediting him, but I think it just gets into how much these artists involved, because we kind of have like a top tier art team yet again. Riley Rossmo does the artwork. I think he's one of like my favorite artists, just because he's so dynamic and fun in his artwork, and especially for a character like Robin King, who's a little manic, just full of crazy energy. He's like the perfect artist for this. Has Sades Tevye Smoka, thanks for joining us. We're just talking about the Robin King tie-in, and Rob Lee does lettering, and he's also an excellent letterer. So we open with a little prologue of how Bruce decided to become Robin. And it's during his parents' funeral, and he thinks about how robins are underestimated. Everyone thinks they're happy little birds, and he is a happy bird that's tweeting happily at the funeral of the parents that he gunned down in an alleyway, as we know from an earlier tie-in. But he also thinks about how these birds are aggressive, and they spread all over the world, and they particularly like areas that have been ravaged by fire and storm. Then we get this awesome spread page where it goes through his utility belts, and we get a little guy that's like he's got a bottled imp, the last remaining Lazarus pit water of his world, Hephaestus's bind of veils, Smilex. What is that? What is Smilex? Some sort of vial that I assume is some sort of Joker gas toxin or something. Tevye says Robin King is a monster. Oh yeah, this book kind of really gets into how much of a monster he is, and I do appreciate it. They really don't pull back, and it's almost like it's a brutal book, really. It's not for the faint of heart. He has 3 rings that I didn't fully appreciate what they were for until later, but one is called the Smallvillian, and it's made of every shade of kryptonite, so like all the different colors of that rock that we've seen over the years. God Thriller, charged with Zeus's energy, and the Ring Pop, forged from the gun used to kill the Waynes. And it just says in brackets for sentimental value. He's got Ragman's Soul Rags, Unholy Water, and Holy Water to dispatch with various things, and a Lobo Hook, which is unbreakable. And he's got like claws on his thing. And but then we cut to the present day, and it's straight up the events after what happened with Death Metal 4. So we got our God-empowered Darkest Night standing over the defeated heroes, and he's like, look at what I'm doing. Like, wake up, Diana. I'm going to use this energy of every crisis in history you've given me to remake all reality. And he's surrounded by Joker dragons. This is where it's like, oh, now we got Rosmo and Placencia and this godlike black void Bruce Wayne. Like, that's what I think about. Like, this is just Bruce Wayne who's transformed himself into this crazy cosmic god that's rewriting all of reality, and just like he's like, I'm the most powerful god in the multiverse. It's awesome. And then he's like, this is just the beginning. I'm going to create a new multiverse in my image. A multiverse ruled by like this dark being and is king of pain. And then we cut to the Robin King, the focus of our story in this book. Haas says, what's your opinion about Miles Morales? Well, I love Miles. I've talked all about him across different things. If you want to learn more about him, I've done a whole video on that character. Like, it's a little outdated as an Origins bio just because so much stuff has happened to that character since then, and it's in desperate need of a part 2. But for now, that I also do talk about how much I like that character in that video, and he's like been the number one of choices I've made in various top 10 videos or fan ones, and I've heartily agreed, and I can't wait for that PS5 game. I also have to get a PS5 for that, so that's another thing. Yeah, we'll talk about that later, Tevye, when we get to it. But then we flash back, and we kind of cut back and forth in time like this. But we flash back to the Robin King on his homeworld, just after he became Robin and dispatched with Alfred in this world. And it talks about how he keeps like killing superheroes that show up in Gotham that try and fight him. He like horribly murders Firestorm with this little black hole thing that he implants in the dude's head, and Adam Strange, like a lot of little obscure characters and stuff like that. Like, what was it earlier? Hans von Hammer and Steve Savage, who battle him in planes and a fun thing. Hawkman and Hawkgirl. He just keeps murdering them all. And then eventually, out through a portal emerged the Batman Who Laughs, who says, like, oh, this all isn't real. You're part of the dark multiverse, which is just like these ideas of worlds that are very ethereal. And he's like, I can take you to a real world where the things you'll kill, like, will mean something. And sure enough, he wins over Robin King pretty quickly. We then cut to present day. So let me see what Tevye is saying. I still maintain both Miles Morales, Spider-Man, and Spider-Gwen need to go back to their own universes. Oh, I disagree. I think them all being part of a shared universe and this whole idea of like a group of Spider-Men and women is pretty cool. And I like them in the main universe. We'll actually talk a little bit more about that later in a different stream. This stream is already enough stuff right now. And then we cut to the present day, and Robin King is currently been tasked with beating on the Trinity, and he uses those rings from before to specifically do so, which I didn't fully appreciate. Red Tornado, Blue Beetle, and Animal Man all show up and battle with him, which is pretty cool. And like, again, there's some pretty cool heroes that show up to fight Robin King. And these are the straight up like main continuity versions of them, who he horribly kills. First, Buddy Baker is murdered by Robin's able to summon these like zombified, or actually not zombified, anti-living equation infected versions of Buddy's family who devour him. So from deceased, he uses that formula to like attack Animal Man and kill him. And then he causes Red Tornado to spin violently out of control while turning him into a human, so his body just like gets horribly mangled. And he's like, oh, your dream of becoming a human turns like true. And then Ted Cord, I believe it's that version of Blue Beetle, gets devoured by a giant blue scarab. We then flash back to the Robin King, and we learn how the various Robins are created by the Darkest Night in the pit, and they all get lowered and just become the mindless crow beings controlled by the Batman Who Laughs. But Robin King doesn't want that to happen to him, so he swallows this special pill that will help him retain his intelligence. And it doesn't entirely work, but there's a flicker of something in him left, and he just becomes a regular Robin until the like events after Death Metal, when the Batman Who Laughs realizes he needs something a little different than the Robins that he has, and kind of reawakens the Robin King within this particular Robin, which is why he just sort of emerges out of nowhere in Death Metal. Kind of an interesting little detail. Anyways, in the present, Robin King is still beating on the Trinity, but before he can finish them off, he gets plucked away from them by the Blackest Night. He's like, no, your time playing with these guys is over. I have something to show you. and he takes him out through reality, back to the Robin pits, and he says, "Your little pill thing actually corrupted every single Robin after you, and left a little flicker of their consciousness over, in the same way that you survived this transformation. And since then, they've all been kind of watching you." And it's kind of a recurring motif across this book that Robin's always imagined an audience cheering for him, as he goes about murdering heroes and stuff like that. And he realizes they have been all this time. And they broke their chains and became their sentience, and now cheer for their one and only Robin King. And the Darkest Night kind of leaves him on this planet with all these Robins worshipping him, much to the little Robin King's delight. And I assume whatever's going to happen next, we'll see in... Well, I don't assume, it says so. The rift continues in Death Metal number 5. But it was a fun little moment and an interesting idea. And a fun little ending for Robin King's character, as, like, I think those evil Batmen are potentially mostly done now, as, like, whatever the Darkest Night has planned next comes forward. It's something. Giant DC, thanks for joining us. Mr. DC Comics says Future Slate is January and February. Yeah, I don't know much about it. People were talking about that. Oh, I see what you're saying, in terms of how long Death Metal's running. I think so. I didn't know it was February, but I knew it was going at least until... Oh, and then Future Slate picks up after Death Metal. Yeah, Future State? Oh, that's what it's called. Yeah, I don't know much about that, but I am curious about Endless Winter, which I have ordered for, and I'm pretty optimistic for. So, 45 minutes. I wasn't really paying too much attention to how long I've been going, but yeah, I think we're going to leave it there. But thank you so much for everyone who joined us. Dex Baker, I believe, has already left, but special thanks to him for giving us a little extra something there with Super Chat. And thanks for everyone who joined me through this extra long chat about Death Metal. But I knew it was going to be long. We had a lot of books to talk about because I got a little behind on some of the weeks. And I still got a bunch of other books to do. I do want to hopefully get some more in, so don't feel bad about joining late, Johnny DC. Hopefully we'll be able to get at least a couple streams in this evening before I have to go for Friday night. And we'll see what we do for the rest of the weekend. Passia says, great review. Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. It was fun to talk about some of these Death Metal books. Like, there are some big movements going on, and hopefully I gave a good impression. I think there's some books I really liked and all of that. I think the core series remains pretty strong, and some of those tie-ins, every once in a while you got a really good tie-in. But the Justice League tie-ins, I don't know, I'm just done with them at this point. I've kind of moved on, and so has the core Death Metal story at this point. But Starfire fans or Nightwing and Cyborg fans will definitely appreciate that book. And it does follow up on stuff specifically from the Justice League books leading into Death Metal, like with Lex Luthor and the Legion of Doom. So if you want payoff for all of that, that's definitely going to happen in the Justice League books. Tevye says, great review, and honestly my favorite tie-in is Speed Metal. Yeah, Speed Metal is great, and if you're a Flash fan, I'm sure you'd love it. I just found it a little cheesy personally. I think my favorite... Oh, I don't know. Some of the ones from earlier were great. I'm thinking... Like, I really liked the guidebook because I love maps and getting into stuff like that. But I think my favorite might be Trinity Crisis #1. Thinking over them and just looking over the little stack I had of them there. But a lot of them are pretty good. Except for the Justice League tie-ins. And Bucket Think Tank was saying the Justice League tie-ins never feel necessary as opposed to the others. I agree. Mr. DC Comics also saying great reviews. Thanks, guys. I do appreciate those comments and stuff. It's always nice to hear. Giant DC says there's a Superman with white cape in one of these issues. Who is it? I believe that is one of the Supermen from... Oh, they say which worlds, but from the Multiversity. So Multiverse's End. There's a couple of characters from a more godlike world of sorts that survived from the Justice League Incarnate. I forget which world exactly that's from. Bucket Think Tank. Also, Trinity Crisis was your fave. It was for mine too, and I think it really gets into what the Bat was saying in live chat earlier. It's just they're doing some really interesting, positive stuff with Superboy Prime. and I'm curious to see what his role is going to be in the story. I think out of everything we talked about so far, that's probably the thing I'm most excited about right now. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time here on Comic Island. And by the way, great stream. Everyone was really fun talking about that and stuff, like on the live chat side of things. That was great.